Hello and welcome to Video Game Hangover. I'm Randy Dickinson and I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Hey, I'm DJ Ross. I'm in Mountain View, California.
Each week here on Video Game Hangover, we talk about the games that have been keeping us up at night. This week we've been playing Sneaky Sasquatch and Little Nightmares 2. Plus we've got all the hot news from Final Fantasy XIV's Fan Festival.
Yay!
Yeah. Only the hot news. We're not talking about any of the cold news. No cold news.
Nobody ever talks about the cold news. Why is that? What is cold news? I don't even know
C-SPAN.
What that would entail.
Anything on C-SPAN. That's the cold news.
That is pretty cold. Yeah, you're right.
Just the live feed of, the Board of Education meeting in Boise, Idaho.
No, that's not what I want. We don't do that here.
No, we're only doing hot news.
Oh, imagine watching C-SPAN.
Sometimes, every now and then, I get, there's some political thing happening, and I'm like, C-SPAN, to the C-SPAN we go.
Really?
But,
I don't know.
Yeah, usually not so much.
Usually not so much, yeah. Sometimes I would accidentally tune the TV to C-SPAN, just be like, that was a close one.
Yeah.
Almost took a nap.
Yeah. I feel like sort of every hotel lobby is C-SPAN or the Weather Channel.
Yeah.
Just channels I'm like, is the Weather Channel still on? I had no idea that was a thing.
Just put on the Weather Channel.
Do we not all have a device that tells us the weather anymore?
No.
Yeah.
That's the channel where you get both the hot and the cold news.
Correct, yes, yeah. Just to see that through to its sort of natural evolution. Good job.
Right.
Natural conclusion.
Yeah.
I have some additional hot news to share with our listeners.
Oh, please.
We are coming up on episode 500 of Video Game Hangover. Insanity.
How did this happen?
I know. Who let this happen? Seriously. Someone should have stepped in. Probably around the 200 episode mark, but here we are.
Was that the point where they were just like, it's gone on long enough?
Just driving off the cliff. But yeah, completely unchecked as we careen into our 500th episode at a point to be determined this summer. We've already determined that point, but we're not going to confuse you with the details. We would love to hear from you. Phone lines are open. If you'd like to leave us a message, ask us a question, sing a song, recite a dirty video game related limerick.
Mm.
We would love to hear from you. You can call 682-999-VGH1. You can also text that number if you'd rather just send us a text message. Yeah, you coward. And we'd love to, celebrate our 500th episode with you. While it's not necessarily intended to be, a corner-to-corner, wall-to-wall kind of call-in show, we have a plan for that episode. We would love to, integrate some thoughts and, recitations from our community.
Sure. I mean, if we got enough calls, maybe it would just become a call-in show. Who knows? Maybe
we could take the week off. That's the 500th episode.
Yeah. Get so many calls we don't even have time for answers. It's just questions.
Yep. That's our secret strategy for episode 500 is the content is all you.
You guys all talk to each other. Somebody call in and then the next person has to answer it.
Right. There you go. Excellent. I'm down for that.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. You got to do it before June 25th, though. That's your cutoff.
Yeah. The mysteriously unannounced episode 500 will be happening sometime after June 25th. So
correct. Yep.
You can do that.
So that number again, 682-999-VGH1.
That phone number is open year-round, by the way. We usually just bring it up for the year-end show. But it's not like we just ignore it the rest of the year. I mean, we do because nobody calls it the rest of the year. But
it's very easy to ignore the rest of the year, yeah.
Yeah. Just want to put that out there.
Yeah.
If you're ever stuck on the side of the highway and you're waiting for the tow truck to show up or whatever, just leave us a message. I mean, you could. I don't want to force that on anyone.
Yeah. But now how delightful and sort of random that would be, like in the middle of September, to get a text message from one of our listeners.
Yeah.
Or a voicemail, or
whatever.
That's pretty much it. Those are your whole. those are options.
Yeah, those are the only options. You covered it. You got it.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, 500 episodes, DJ. Just insane.
Oh, I'm exhausted just thinking about it.
So, what are you playing? What's happening in the world of video games as pertains to DJ Ross?
Oh man, well, quite a weekend. The Final Fantasy XIV Fan Festival was this last weekend.
Woo!
Had a lot of big announcements about the new expansion coming out this fall. It was exciting. That's all the hot news you're talking about.
Is this thing that happens in is this the Vegas thing that they do?
Yeah, it's usually in Vegas. Yeah. I was going to say, though, before we get to all their hot announcements, I have a hot announcement of my own.
Oh, wow.
Which is, I did it. I cleared the final raid tier in this game. I've been working on this for months at this point, as I'm sure if you've listened to the episode of the last few months, you may have heard. But
any of the previous 500 episodes, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, not that long. Give me some credit. But I mean, what an auspicious weekend, the weekend of Fan Festival. I finally got a group together, and we put it down. So I want to just take a minute to actually describe what is going on in this fight, just to give you an idea of what I've been going through for the last 4 months. Mm-hmm. So this last fight in particular.
For the sake of our listeners who have not listened to all the previous episodes, sort of a short version of what you're referring to.
Oh yeah, no, sorry, I should do a little recap. So basically, for the last few months, I have been attempting the what they call the Savage Raid tier in Final Fantasy XIV, which is basically a collection of extremely difficult boss fights. It's the end game content, really. So it's like you've done everything else in the game at that point. Here is some extra stuff it's very challenging. So if you're just that into the game, it gives you something to just throw yourself against while you wait for the next update to come out. It's sort of like, you play Yakuza or whatever to get through the storyline. But then you finish the storyline, and after the credits, they're like, hey, what if you went back into that sewer dungeon or whatever? That could be pretty tough. That could be an extra challenge for you.
Yeah.
And, most of the time you're like, no, thanks. The story was good. That's what I was here for.
Right.
But in some cases, some certain people are just like, you know what? Maybe I'll give that sewer a shot. So that's sort of what this is in Final Fantasy.
It's just the sewers of Final Fantasy.
Yes, exactly. It's the sewer. Just the bonus sewer level. But it's 4 boss fights. They're all very difficult. They require a lot of party communication, and everybody just has to be very skilled at playing their job to make sure you can get past these bosses. And this last one, it's very interesting because it's actually 2 bosses in one. Normally you have 90 minutes to get through one of these bosses. You can attempt it however many times you want. You're probably going to die a bunch of times because it really, if you actually beat the boss, it only takes about 10 minutes. But this one, since it's 2 bosses, you have 2 hours per session.
Wow.
And what happens is you go in and you fight this first boss, which is very difficult. And if you beat the first boss, you get kind of a checkpoint. So when the second boss shows up, if your party dies at that point, you just start over at the second boss, which is a huge relief. Yeah, it's very generous. And my biggest struggle, I think, just working on this last fight is every time, eventually once I finally got past the first boss and onto the second one, whenever I would look for a group who wanted to practice the second fight or the second boss, I would end up in these groups who were still kind of stuck on the first boss and were not really proficient at clearing that one yet. So I have joined so many parties where we were like, hey, we're on the second boss, let's go practice whatever part of the fight. And we go in there and we just spend 30 minutes dying over and over to the first boss for whatever reason. It was very frustrating. And it got to the point where I would join these groups and I would recognize a lot of names in there because they're all these other people who are also trying to finish this thing. Mm-hmm. And it seemed like the general attitude after doing it for this long was we all just want to be done with this thing. We all just want to find the group that is going to get us through to the end. And not be stuck on phase 1 of this thing again.
Right.
One side effect of that was that the fact that I got to spend so much time fighting the first boss over and over again is that I just got very, very good at fighting the first boss. So, I mean, I don't know if that's like a good thing or if it just compounded the feeling that like whenever I got into one of those groups who would be stuck on the first boss, that I was just like, why? What are you all doing in here with me? Like, why aren't you past this point yet? But whatever. I was trying to find the silver lining and just getting stuck at that point over and over again.
Yeah.
But it's been a journey. It's been like, I remember going to this, like the very first time I went into this final fight, just like having so much anxiety over it because like I never fought the final boss of one of these raid tiers before when it was like current content. So I was like, I don't really even know what to expect on some level. Like, how difficult is this going to be? And, you know, the last thing I want to do is just die over and over again myself and waste everybody else's time. Because surely there are other people in this group who are like past the point where I am and are waiting for me to catch up.
And they're recording their podcast this week complaining about this noob. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they probably did that weeks ago because, hopefully they cleared the fight.
They're just way ahead of you, yeah.
Yeah. Get a load of this guy just in here for the first time. But it was like, I mean, that was months ago at this point. And over the last few weeks, I just feel like there's been such, I've noticed my ability to deal with this fight has improved so much. It's been very, like, I don't know, it's been very satisfying in a way, just remembering how kind of confused I was at the start. And now at the end, I'm just like, kind of sleepwalking my way through this thing. It was like, you know, in Futurama when Fry drinks the last cup of coffee.
Yes,
it was like that basically. Well, I'll just like zone into this thing and be like, all right, don't even tell me what to do. I'll just do it. And you guys like, hopefully everything else works out for you because I know exactly what to do. I know where to be. Everything's moving in slow motion.
Enlightenment. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So it's been a lot of just struggling. But this weekend, I finally got that magic group. We got into the fight. We killed the first boss in one try. I was like, this is unbelievable. This has never happened ever. This is the group, surely. And then we spent the entirety of the rest of the 2 hours just dying to the second boss, which I was like, oh man, what a mood swing. I was so confident in this group. And now I'm not so sure. But as it turned out, we were like 10 minutes left in this 2 hour time limit. And we just had the magic run and we took it down. Fan Festival weekend. It was just a magical experience, I'm sure, for everybody.
Excellent.
Oh, what a relief. And now I've done it. And now it's done. And I can say that I've finished the final raid tier. I'm very satisfied about that.
Nice. Is that sort of the ultimate Final Fantasy XIV kind of achievement at this point? And now that you've, you know, is this your no more worlds left to conquer moment?
Well, funny you should ask. There's like another tier of fights above this that are even more difficult. But like I know when to cut myself off. Like those fights are specifically designed like for the people you're asking about. It's like, okay, you've done all the Savage raids. Here's stuff that is designed to be so difficult. Like I've heard of people, like not just regular people who are like dedicated raiders in this game taking weeks or even months to finish these things. So I'm like, nope, I think I'm good at this point.
Yeah. Yikes.
I looked into, I mean, I was just kind of humoring myself. I looked at some guides into how those fights work, and I was just like, no thanks. I think I'm totally fine.
It's important to know what your limits are, yeah.
Yeah. It's good to know.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Well, good. That's exciting. That's yeah, man, that's been a while coming, so good for you. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. But anyway, so as for the actual fan festival, this is like, comes around every couple years, like usually before they announce or before they release the next big expansion. This year's was a little different because, as you were saying, like usually they have one of these like in Vegas, and they'll do one in Tokyo, and then somewhere in Europe. It's like a global thing. But because of, you know, just the pandemic, and it's very difficult for people to gather in huge crowds and do all that, they kind of like had to put all that stuff aside this year, and they decided to do just an online thing. They actually had plans, I think, to invite some people to the venue they were hosting it at. It was somewhere in Tokyo, but that was before like the government just put down another state of emergency or whatever, like a few weeks ago, so they canceled that.
Oh, jeez.
And it was just it was like some of the key developers, just members of the staff on stage to an empty auditorium.
Oh,
which was, it's a little sad, but at the same time, it's nice that everybody's just being very responsible.
Yeah, of course.
Everybody was like social distancing on stage, which was nice to see. But it was also interesting because like normally they would hold 3 of these things spread a couple months apart around the world, but this was like they just did it one weekend in all regions. They had interpreters on the stream, so like if they were doing like all the development staff speaks Japanese for the most part, but they would have English interpreters, which was cool. They very prominently featured like Twitch comments or like YouTube comments on the stage at certain points, which was a lot of fun. And they had people call in, like people from the community. They did a big Zoom group call at some point, which was kind of hilarious because it would be like, just a wall of Zoom faces.
Right.
And then down in the corner, there was like the director of the game, and he was like, "Hey guys." It was hilarious. But anyway, so big news. Just to get out of the way, they confirmed that the new job is a Reaper. So you were right. He's a scythe guy, which I think is interesting.
Oh, neat. I do remember us kind of spitballing that a few weeks ago. That's exciting.
Yeah. Very edgy looking. It's got like the scary like ghost thing that follows him around. They use in battle. Everybody was like, "Oh man, Bloodborne 2 is looking great," because they just have he's just wearing like a Bloodborne outfit and he has this big scary scythe. So that'll be interesting when that comes out. Lots of other fun announcements and events, but the one thing that really caught me by surprise was this thing they did. It was like a regular segment that the Japanese community team puts on. Basically what it was is they did like a little guided tour of some of the areas in the game. Because one of the, since they couldn't have people at the fan festival in person, they wanted to put together all these little like digital events that people could kind of participate in from home.
Sure.
So they got a few of the guys from the community team on the stream. And they said, we're just going to be running around in the game. So even if you're not on the same server as we are, you can like log in and go to these same spots, kind of follow us around remotely. So I was like, sure, let's do it. Let's see what this is all about. I have no idea what this show normally is. But it ended up being super cool. It was basically like having like a tour guide, just walk people around the game and explain sort of the history of different areas, or like sometimes they would talk about sort of what they had to do to construct some of the areas, or like give little details about those in the game.
Oh, neat. That's cool.
And as I was doing it, I was like not on the same server as these guys. Like I could see on the stream they had what looked like 100 people all following them around in this huge mob. But I would like go to the spot wherever they were on my server, and sure enough, there would be like a handful of other people just there, all presumably watching the same stream that I was.
Oh, nice.
I was just like, "Hey guys, enjoying the fan festival?" So it was very fun. I really wasn't expecting like that sort of experience, but I like when you have the chance to play the developer commentary track in a game.
Oh yeah,
whenever that's a feature.
More games should have that. I love that.
Yeah, but it was so cool just having this live tour. Like, how many opportunities do you have that to just have one of the actual devs lead people around?
Yeah. None, really, that I can think of. So, yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, man, it's too bad that this is normally, like, I guess I don't even know where they do it usually, because it sounds like maybe it's on one of the Japanese Twitch channels or something. But I thought, well, that was so cool. I should figure out when the next one is happening and attempt to follow along, even if I can't understand it, most of it. Yeah.
There'll probably be some other fans kind of camping out in your server.
Possibly, yeah. I should look those guys up, see if anybody has the info. Guys, when's the next one of these? When are we all meeting up again? But that just sort of leads into just, I mean, I feel a little ridiculous talking about Fan Festival at this point, because clearly, like, talk about this game a lot. I'm super into it. Obviously, I probably sound like somebody who is just like gallons deep into the Kool-Aid at this point. But I don't know. It was such an amazing weekend with all the events they put on, even if it was all remote. It just kind of reinforces like how like good of a relationship this development team has with the community, because I feel like it's very easy to be kind of cynical about like game development and like fan interactions. But I really do feel like from watching these things and all the other community events that this team puts on, that they really do genuinely care about like coming to work every day and getting to work on this game and interacting with the community, because it really shows through these fan events. I thought it was really special.
Awesome. That's exciting.
Yeah. Every time like they have one of these fan fests or some other just like news showcase, the producer will usually get up on stage and do like a very heartfelt speech about how they're all working very hard to put out the next patch and all that. But recently he's been adding this section where, it's always kind of a fear that the director-producer, Naoki Yoshida, is going to like step away from the project at some point, because he's been on it for a very long time. He started, he's also producing Final Fantasy 16, which they announced last year.
Oh.
And it feels like he's just done so much work into getting this game into like the place where it is now that, I don't know, I feel like there would be a lot of uncertainty about the future of the game if he were ever to leave the project.
Right. This is probably itching to, do another thing, do something else.
Yeah. But lately he's been adding this little section into his keynotes where he talks about, it starts out sounding like he's just trying to reassure people that he's not going to leave the project anytime soon, which is like, sure, of course you want to do that.
All right.
But the wording he uses is really interesting, because he says like, I'm not going to leave the project because at this point, like, I've been around so much, I've like put so much into this, that he considers it to be his life's work.
Wow.
So he really feels like he's going to be working on it for like just as long as possible, which I think is like, it's, on one hand it's very reassuring, but it's also just, I don't know, just kind of unbelievable. Just like imagine, you going to work and just feeling such dedication for whatever you're working on that you feel like that is sort of like your purpose. And, it's just, you feel like you're going to be committed to it for like the rest of your life, more or less.
Right.
So it's really amazing to hear him say that. And I think it sort of is emblematic of just how dedicated the rest of the development team is to working on this thing.
Very cool.
So just always very, very nice to hear from the developers directly.
Yeah. How passionate they are and how sort of dedicated they are to that game and the community. That's exciting.
Yeah. Oh, I really feel like, obviously I am an advocate for this game, but I'm just like, I wish more people, like everybody is a fan of their own respective games. I just wish everybody else could have an experience that is like on the same level as sort of the relationship I have had with this game. Like, I wish they would do Animal Crossing fan festivals every year. I wish they would do, I don't know what else.
Me too.
Yeah, you do. Like, we do a Fortnite fan festival. Maybe they have something like that. But just it's been incredible, because the game is like over 10 years old at this point if you've been playing since the 1.0 release. So just having like that kind of depth and history to this game has been pretty unique.
Yeah, there aren't a lot of like big single game community things that I feel like compelled to participate in or feel like I'm left out of when I don't get it. Mm-hmm. But definitely you're seeing the sort of the rise of Pokemon Go a couple of years ago, where it was like everybody in the free world basically spoke that language except for me. Like that was one of the rare occasions where I was sort of like, oh, I really feel left out of this thing. And it was cool that, those fans had that thing to bring them together in that way. I'm envious of that. Absolutely. Yeah. It's not the product that I would choose to sort of rally around, obviously, but yeah, so if there was an Animal Crossing equivalent, I'm in it. I'm invested. that would be the thing that gets me there. But yeah, that's really neat that things like that exist and can be cobbled out of whatever your fandom is.
Yeah, I don't even know. Like, it would, even if they did something for Animal Crossing, it would just feel slightly different because that game essentially like reboots itself every 4 or 5 years.
Right, that's true too. Yeah,
but just imagine if 2030 they're announcing the 10th season of Animal Crossing New Horizons and all the new stuff that they're adding in the latest content update. And you'd be like, oh,
well, that's the thing. As we were typing up our outline, I thought it was just the Final Fantasy Fan Festival and that it was just sort of this collection of people who like all of the Final Fantasy games. But I'm like, no, it's just dedicated to 14.
just one game.
Just the one game, yeah. Which is, is years and years in the works. But still, it's kind of insane that, you could pull everybody who likes any Final Fantasy game together in a collective, and they'd probably have a lot to talk about. But the fact that this event is dedicated solely to that one game is surprising.
Yeah. Oh, man, I don't know if I would go to a general Final Fantasy Fan Festival. I feel like there'd be a lot of violence. You get, like, all the cliques forming, like, oh, here's the Final Fantasy X group. There's the 13 group. There'd be like 3 very disheveled looking people.
Right, yeah. Don't get off on the 13th floor of the hotel because that's all the Final Fantasy 13 people.
Oh my god, that'd be amazing if they just like you had to register by like favorite Final Fantasy game. That would be incredible. Right,
and they sort of put you on a hotel room floor with all of they have to find a hotel tall enough to house all the Final Fantasy games.
I wonder if they have ever considered that. It's pretty unique, like this fan festival event. I don't know if they've done a big community event for the entire series. That would be something. They probably realize, it would just be a bloodbath, so should probably avoid it.
Right.
But anyway, so that was Fan Festival. Lots of exciting stuff.
Cool.
So sad it's over, but we got the expansion to look forward to now.
So the expansion is not just a character; it is or class, excuse me. It's story and content as well beyond that.
Oh yeah, no, it's like a huge story update. It's like almost a standalone like RPG worth.
Oh, cool! All right,
and I'm sure I'll be talking more about it once it comes out in November. So I'll table it for now.
Cool. Good. So I have a couple of big games coming out in the next couple of weeks that I want to dedicate myself to. Nothing on par with Final Fantasy XIV, certainly. But I have been trying. Commitments. No, nothing like that. To keep my sort of gaming commitments in the short term relatively brief. I don't want to start anything that I can't finish because, I have a problem with that anyways. So, I wasn't going to start some, 100-hour RPG.
You're going to wait a week so you can start those other games you're not going to finish.
Correct, exactly. That's, you know me so well, DJ Ross. But yeah, so in the short term, I've been kind of going through, my Switch and through my PS4 and a little bit through my Xbox One and through the Game Pass games to see if there's anything kind of lurking on there that is, maybe a single game session, a single sitting session or two that I can kind of play through and talk about on the show and sort of cross off of my backlog. Not a backlog attack per se. But yeah, just an effort to kind of maybe clean up some of the more, 3 to 5 hour experiences that it might be sort of, toiling away on my Switch or PS4.
Man, good luck if you're including all of Game Pass in your backlog at this point, because there's a lot of games on there.
I mean, it sort of is. Like, I could have any of them on demand if I chose to.
Right.
So, yeah.
I mean, if your backlog suddenly includes just like every video game that has released, if you decided that.
Yeah. So. But the one that jumped out at me, the one that I picked up in February and just didn't get around to, was Little Nightmares 2. I really adored Little Nightmares 1. Well, it's not called Little Nightmares 1. It's just called Little Nightmares. But and was excited about the sequel. It was supposed to come out last October, and then it slipped for obviously many reasons into early February, which is not, exactly when I associate big spooky games to come out. But
I was gonna say it feels a little out of season.
Yeah, it feels like an October game, right? So I grabbed it. I didn't get around to it right away. I forget what else I was playing at the time, and I just sort of started feeling like, well, I'll play it in October where it belongs. And that didn't happen. I just played it this weekend. So this I guess this little series of video games is, I think, sort of on par with things like Inside or Limbo, and some of the games that sort of ape that aesthetic where it's sort of dark and shadowy. They're essentially platformers or even puzzle platformers, constantly moving to the right. Well, at least it's sort of in these games mentioned something, big and scary chases after you generally.
Are you being chased in this?
Yeah, that's one of the things in the Little Nightmare games. There generally are sort of environments that you're kind of stuck in and you're kind of puzzling your way out of. In Little Nightmares 2 specifically, you are a very little tiny human, just a little, I would say a kid. Probably a child. The game doesn't specify that you are, and you don't ever sort of really get kind of a close-up look at their face. They're always kind of in shadow or have a hat on. But you look like a little person, like a little, I don't know, toddler maybe. But
in the first one, you were like a little kid in a raincoat, right? Is that the
correct?
The right game I'm thinking of? Okay.
Yep, that's it. And in the second game, you that kid's name was Six, and in this game, you're a kid named Mono, and you have like a little bit of a trench coat, and you pick up a different assortment of hats along the way. They're hidden in the environment, and you swap them out. And they're collectible, but they also sort of later in the game kind of factor into the character's identity.
Not even like they give you abilities or something, but they piece together your character history through these hats.
Not so much that. I'm trying to be evasive about it, but it's relevant. The hat thing is relevant.
It's the secret to all these hats.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, in this you are this little kid Mono, and you wake up in the woods. You just start the game, eyes fluttering open, huddled for warmth in a leafy wooded area, and start to explore a little bit, and you find a cabin where something gross and horrible is happening inside. And there is a big hunter type person who, instinctively as a gamer and perhaps as a small child, you don't want that person to know that you're around. So you sneak. You try to find ways around to not alert them. You try to make as little noise as possible. And in fact, there's no dialogue in the game whatsoever. There's not a single word spoken in the entire game. You have an ability to sort of tap a call button, and your character whispers, "Hey," or something similar to that. But that's all you get. There's really no other sort of dialogue or exposition that comes with it.
Hey, as in like you're calling them over?
Yes, yeah. Because later in the game you connect with another character, and it in fact is Six from the first game.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and she follows you around through the duration of this game. You will occasionally get separated. You will occasionally work very hard to make your way back, because you never feel so lonely in this spooky, horrible game as you do when Six is no longer behind you. They really, again, it's incredible what they do without sort of dialogue, build this interesting connection between these two characters, so that when she's not there to be of support, or you can hold hands with her. This is interesting. You squeeze sort of the left trigger button, and wherever she is, she sort of comes up to you and grabs your hand. And then you can kind of run and pull her behind you if you want to. There are periods where she'll grab your hand and lead you to things and stuff like that. She's also good for kind of boosting you up over areas. She'll help with sort of puzzle solutions. There's a puzzle sort of later in the game, no spoiler here, where you have to collect two of a thing. And put them in something else to turn something on. Okay. And And you will do the big work of trying to find those two things. But once you sort of get both of them, she'll grab one of them and bring it over to the thing. And you take the other one and bring it over to the thing. And so yeah, she does sort of moderately helpful things. But in a lot of ways, she's there to be a bit of a security blanket. When you do get separated, it's very scary. It's very like, oh no, I hope I don't have to finish this game without Six. I hope I don't have to finish this area without her. And it becomes sort of this built-in, yes, I'm trying to escape this horrible situation, but I also want to make sure I get back to my buddy.
Huh. Is that like ever an actual question of whether you've like you're supposed to have left them behind, or do you feel like they just, or I don't know if that's giving anything away if you
yeah. That might be giving something away.
Okay, yeah. So yeah. As I was asking that, I was like, maybe I don't want to know the answer to this.
I was very worried throughout some of the segments where Six and I were separated that I felt maybe I would never see her again, or that maybe she was just meant to be sort of this little inclusion early in the game, and wasn't meant to be sort of a co-op partner through the whole thing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was a genuine concern on behalf of me playing this. That. Geez, I hope I get back to my the only person in this game who's not trying to kill me. Yeah, so chases. Inevitably, you'll make your way sort of out of the woods to a hospital, I believe, is the next thing, and then into a big city. And then the city has like a schoolhouse and a police station and a couple of other places, a post office and stuff like that you're trying to sort of get your way through to do something, to get out of the city, to get away from all these people who are horrible and trying to kill you. They're all sort of horribly creepy and disfigured. The schoolhouse is filled with just crazy, wild children who are marionettes and have little parts of them broken off. The hospital is filled with mannequins, which are spooky enough on their own, but occasionally some of them will move and come after you. Yeah. So you'll go into a room with, 40 mannequins standing around in sort of, surgical gowns and things like that, or in pieces on tables and stuff like that, and you're kind of creep your way through. Every now and then,
always like mannequins in hospitals. Like, when was the last time you even saw a mannequin, let alone in a hospital?
I don't know. I'm not sure specifically why there are mannequins in this hospital, but
that's just. It feels like such a Silent Hill thing to me. I don't know if that is like if they created that sort of trope, but it's just weird. It's popping up.
Yeah, I think what Little Nightmares kind of goes back to is really trying to sort of exploit the things that are nightmares to people, are, sort of nightmare inducing. So you get the creepy mannequins, you get the horribly disfigured people, you get the, killer mannequins in the hospital. So just it hits these little sort of nightmare buttons for people, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sarah is, my girlfriend is horrified of dolls, does not like dolls at all. And I occasionally use that.
Oh no! That's
to my
terrible.
Entertainment, not in a way that sort of would keep her up at night or anything like that. Nothing that sort of reduces her to tears, but it's just does not. Yeah,
yeah. Okay, so you're just like, check out this doll. This is
right. Look at this doll. In Harrisburg, there is a doll hospital.
No, I'm sure it's fine, but it sounds horrifying.
Sure. It sounds like a little nightmare. But whenever we sort of drive past the big sign outside, it's a place where people bring collectibles to have them repaired. There is a lot of
hospital.
A doll hospital.
There's why they should have asked somebody about that.
A big sign on the outside that says doll hospital. And I speculate quite loudly to Sarah about what goes on in there.
It's right next to the billboard for the haunted doll hospital.
Right, exactly. You would think they would have worked out some sort of real estate thing on that.
Oh my God.
But yeah, so the schoolhouse full of screaming, broken marionette children was just an absolute nightmare for my girlfriend. The game is, despite that segment, really good for spectators. It's about 6-7 hours long, and I played through the entire thing kind of in a prolonged session, breaking for lunch in the middle, and Sarah watched and cheered on and offered sort of puzzle ideas and solutions through the entire thing, was deeply invested in seeing the end of this game. and even commented, "This game has really good graphics." I'm like, "Yes, it does." Yeah. Congratulations on that observation. That's exciting. So she, threw like hands over her eyes, watching through her fingers, me make my way through the dollhouse. Not the dollhouse, the creepy marionette elementary school.
Yeah.
So inevitably, as you are trying to make your way out of one of these areas, there is a big bad that you're trying to avoid. As it goes sort of throughout the course of this game, they eventually detect you and chase after you. And you will then have to, like an Uncharted game, go on a prolonged sort of run and jump to get away from them. And I think it's kind of the weakest part of this game. The bulk of these experiences are you sort of in the shadows, being creepy, trying to make your way around. The stealth parts are really, really fun. There's a part in the schoolhouse where there's a creepy teacher who is playing piano, and she'll break sometimes from sort of playing the piano to sort of write music notes on the little pad she's composing. And you're trying to drag a chair behind her to be able to reach up to a higher place, but you can only drag the chair while she's playing music. And you have to sort of listen to the audio cue to know when her little musical segment is kind of winding down, so you can absolutely just freeze in place and not make a sound until she scribbles her notes and then starts playing again, and you can drag the chair a little bit more. I love that sequence. It was so much fun, and super terrifying.
It sounds so stressful. I don't know about this game.
Yeah. It is stressful, but I don't know. It's delightful to sort of be successful at those things, to sort of get the satisfaction of walking out of the horrible place, holding your friend's hand. You get little sort of punctuations of violence sometimes too. You're a little person, but you'll occasionally find like a hammer, and it's so heavy you can't quite sort of carry it around with you. You just sort of drag it behind you. But in the schoolhouse, there are creepy marionette children who will come screaming towards you, and you can sort of like hit a button, and then you go into a big swing animation. So you kind of got to get the timing right, and you can kind of smash the marionette that's chasing you. And those little punctuations of violence are very cathartic. You do get, it's just very satisfying to whack in there. And they shatter because they're made out of ceramic or whatever. And it's just, again, very satisfying to sort of have that moment to, not hide anymore, but or sort of lurk in the shadows, but to be able to sort of fight back and be victorious.
Yeah, I can imagine. I don't want to play a game where there are creepy marionettes chasing me, but if I can smash one with a hammer, that sounds great. I'll just do that instead.
Yeah. And so the game will inevitably create some conceit that will stop you from bringing the hammer along with you everywhere. You can't just put it in your pocket and take it because, again, it's huge and cumbersome. So when I leave the hammer behind, it's always very sad because it's the one weapon you have, really, to sort of defend yourself from the marionette children.
Yeah. That's like one of those situations where you're like, if that were me, I would just figure out a way to bring the hammer with me.
Right. Yeah. That's one of those sort of
it seems like a
video game things. Yeah. Maybe stop for a bit, work out so that I'm better at carrying hammers.
Yeah. Or just stay with the hammer. Like, it's fine here.
Yeah. Or use my little co-op partner, have her carry one end of the hammer while I carry the other, and we just take it everywhere.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Find a bag, maybe. But no, not in this video game. Unfortunately, you only get the hammer for a little while. There are other occasions where you do get kind of fun, sort of limited time only weapons that do give you kind of the satisfying crunch of being able to survive a situation. But yeah, back to those chase scenes. Each of these little scenarios ends with a chase, with you sort of trying to run and jump and climb and swing
every
from
single one.
Things. It kind of is every one. So as you're leaving the hospital, there's one. As you're trying to get out of the woods, there's one. As you're trying to make your way through kind of an apartment complex, there's one. So it gets a little frustrating because there's a lot of trial and error, and there's a lot of like stupid shit where you get kind of like, oh, I got stuck on the geometry and I didn't quite scrabble up the thing fast enough, so the monster got me. And they're good about sort of rewinding very quickly and getting you back to a sort of save point where you can do it all over again. But you're basically just sort of rehearsing the button presses at that point, and it no longer feels kind of fun and on the fly. It just feels like this kind of arduous task you have to survive. So it's the one part
you're all
of the
set
game.
to be an in-game raider now.
Exactly. There you go. In this way, perhaps my experience this weekend and yours were very similar. But other than those occasional frustrations of those chase sequences, which again are satisfying to sort of be successful at, but do take more kind of throwing yourself at them over and over and over again before you basically just sort of memorize how to do it, which I contend maybe is not great game design. The rest of this I adore. It's super spooky, super creepy. Again, just a lot of sort of interesting kind of world building and character building with no dialogue, with zero background information. You don't really know what's happening or why everybody is horrible and disfigured, but you get little clues throughout. So again, playing it with Sarah, watching, we were sharing kind of fun and cool ideas. The ending is very satisfying. I was really impressed with how well they wrapped all this up. And again, it was this 25-minute conversation on the couch afterwards of like, what if it means this? So again,
that's cool.
Yeah, I love that stuff.
Or an open-ended ending.
Don't get to, share video game theories with my non-gamer girlfriend very often. So, again, it's very satisfying to be able to have that conversation and talk about the ending of Little Nightmares 2 over dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah. So would recommend. I had a lot of fun playing this. Both of these games are a blast. Just very, very satisfying, but you must have a very high tolerance for super creepy shit. Because
it feels like
the game
brings that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other side of it too is, again, Sarah mentioned this while we were playing, that like if you have kids, if you're a protective parent, this probably would be a tough game to get through, because it is 8 hours of small children in a lot of peril.
Yeah. Well, now they mention that, I can recall people saying a similar thing. I can recall like parents saying stuff about the first game, like they're having like strong reactions to playing it, or just even hearing about it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I don't have kids, so I'm fine. Yeah. But yeah, I can imagine that being tough for some folks to get through. But yeah, Little Nightmares games. I was sad to read afterwards that the developers don't intend to make any more of them. The Tarsier Studio, they're from Sweden, has made both of them. They are moving on to other things. The interesting sort of conclusion of that story is that Capcom actually owns the property of Little Nightmares.
Oh, weird.
And they intend to have other studios make more Little Nightmares games.
Oh, okay. So, great. So, look forward to Super Ultra Little Nightmares Turbo or whatever.
It's a kart racer. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's good or not. I don't know if... I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what it looks like.
That's always kind of my reaction. I'm just like, whenever, you have that weird IP situation. It's like, I guess it's cool that the franchise will continue, but let's also keep an eye on what the actual developers are doing, because I'm sure they'll put out something interesting.
That's it. I think I am perhaps more interested in the next thing that Tarsier makes than the next Little Nightmares that Capcom and some unnamed studio make. So,
right.
Yeah. Maybe it's not. No, it wasn't not Capcom. Namco Bandai owns it.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So perhaps sort of unfairly maligning Capcom there, but yeah, still, it's not going to be Tarsier making the next Little Nightmares, and that is a bit of a nightmare in itself.
Ho ho.
Haha.
Man, not to go on too much of a tangent, but I've been watching a lot of Resident Evil Village because that came out a couple weeks ago at this point. And I'm probably not going to play it myself, but I'm very curious about it, as we discussed last week. So I was like,
that's a big nightmare, right? That's
a huge nightmare. It's like 10
scary.
feet tall at least. But so I was like, I'll just watch people struggle through it on Twitch or whatever. And I did not realize how much of that game is just you being chased by I hope it's not a spoiler, but in a lot of cases by the tall vampire lady.
Oh. And
also just how much of it just seems very scripted. I heard like one of the streamers I was watching described it feeling like you were on a ride at a lot of points. Because like you lose control of the camera and it's just kind of like pivoting around, just being all cinematic. But also your comments about just having to redo all those platforming sections very much reminded me of like they would be getting chased by this one thing, and kind of a mini cutscene would happen, and they would die and be thrown back a couple minutes and just have to do the entire thing over and over again. And I just thought, well, first of all, I just don't like being chased in horror games, because that is like the most terrifying thing. But then I like just the feeling of like, oh, I died again, so now I have to sit through like she's gonna say that exact line of dialogue again, and then like this window is gonna break or whatever happens. It just, I don't know. It feels like I want more out of horror games.
Yeah.
Although it seems like it's like maybe the ride is what people want. Maybe that is like people's ideal horror gaming experience.
Yeah, you cannot escape the game. It is all over, like, pop culture. Like, it's all over Twitter. I keep getting references to it in my Facebook and stuff like that. So there are a lot of people out and enjoying and pulling a lot of fun things out of Resident Evil Village. But yeah, I think it's sort of fine line that, like, repeating all that stuff over and over is sort of the opposite of scary and the opposite of fun for me. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think developers to a degree have an obligation to put your characters in peril, make the gamer feel like they're not going to survive this thing, but ultimately kind of make those situations survivable so that you don't get stuck in that lather, rinse, repeat cycle, because that's the death of fun, I think.
Yeah, that is just fun. No matter what type of game it is, if I have to go through a certain point too many times, it just gets frustrating. And it's not even like I'm fine with having to redo something if I'm just like learning how it works. I mean, clearly, spending hours fighting this boss or whatever.
Right.
But like, if every time I died on that boss, I had to watch a 30-second cutscene of like the boss showing up and monologuing, just be like, well, this is just a waste of my time.
Yeah. I agree. But that's sort of the genius of Little Nightmares being a completely dialogue-free experience.
Yeah, that's a
you don't have to sit through anyone giving you a soliloquy or talking about their plan of how they're going to kill you or whatever.
Yeah. Huh. Anyway, so I guess I'm glad other people are playing Resident Evil, so I don't have to.
Right. Yeah.
Wait, so you're being chased also in the first Little Nightmares?
Yes, it's been a bit since I played the first one, and I kind of almost want to replay it again after coming out of the second one, but I have a recollection of that being kind of built into that as well. There are fewer environments in the first Little Nightmares, so I think there are fewer of those scenes, but because in Little Nightmares 2 you're kind of moving through a city, so you kind of go through like all the places I mentioned. You start in the woods and go to a hospital, and then on and on and on. Each of those sort of has its boss essentially at the end, and because you're an underpowered little child, you're really your only recourse is to run away from them. Uh-huh. So it just stages this big chase that you have to kind of run and jump out of. Yeah.
Oh, I'm very curious because I like those. Like I like Limbo and Inside. I kind of wonder what happened to that studio. Like, what are they making?
Yeah.
So
I wonder. Playdead, is that what they're called? Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I feel like those two came out in pretty quick succession. I want to know what the third thing is.
I bet, it feels that way to me too, but I bet it was actually like 5 or 6 years in between.
Oh, probably.
Or maybe Inside, maybe it's been like 10 years since Inside came out, because I had just no concept of the passage of time at this point.
Right. Yeah, I think Little Nightmares is satisfying in the ways that sort of being successful at some of the puzzles and some of the situations, and particularly Inside, is satisfying. Mm-hmm. Limbo is just devilish because it's super scary, and it's also a very tough puzzle game. The puzzles that you encounter in Little Nightmares aren't nearly as sort of head-scratchingly difficult, I think, as Limbo, but you still get the satisfaction of successfully sort of navigating your way through some pretty dicey situations.
Yeah. Oh man, Limbo came out in 2010. Inside was 2016.
Oh, wow.
Which, incidentally, was a very long time ago anyway.
So that's 5 years to work on their next thing. If they're a game every 6 years, yeah, it should be popping out of the toaster any minute now.
All right, can't wait.
Excellent. You heard it here first. New Playdead game coming soon.
Right. Oh.
So what is Sneaky Sasquatch, DJ?
Sneaky Sasquatch. Should I talk about this a week? I mean, I've only played it a little bit. I've been this is an Apple Arcade thing, and I have just been not taking advantage of my Apple Arcade subscription and all the wealth just the gaming treasures contained therein. But I figured I should at least play one of these things, and I've heard good things about Sneaky Sasquatch. I've at least heard it mentioned enough that I felt like I should give it a stab. It's basically like a stealth game. I mean, it's like kind of stealth light. You play as a Sasquatch who is living like around a campground, and basically you spend the day sneaking around these campgrounds and trying to steal food from everybody's picnic baskets or coolers or whatever, while trying to avoid getting caught by the pesky ranger. Does this sound familiar at all? Feels like a very, like, you know...
Yogi Bear the game.
Exactly.
Hey, boo-boo.
Except in this one, you're a Sasquatch. I imagine that is just to avoid, you know, angry lawyers or whatever.
Right, yeah, you can't sort of put Yogi Bear in your game without his permission.
Yeah.
Well, not his permission.
I mean, somebody. You should get Yogi Bear's permission to use his likeness. Otherwise, you're going to get sued. But, I mean, it just kind of boils down to sneaking around and, like, hiding in bushes if a camper walks by or if a ranger walks by. And just finding an unwatched or an unmonitored picnic basket and opening up and very quickly shoving everything, like all the contents, into your backpack. And
it sounds very Yogi Bear as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's weird because I mean, I feel like Yogi Bear is old enough that maybe it wasn't intentional, but I also feel like he's well known enough, just like culturally, that people are like, oh yeah, bears or just wild animals stealing campers' picnic baskets. Sure, that happens.
Right.
So you like kind of sneak around. I'm playing this on my phone, so it's all touch controls. You like drag your finger around to get the Sasquatch to move around the screen. And this is something I think is really fun about it. You're very noisy when you walk around because you're Bigfoot. So in order to sneak up on these picnic baskets without being noticed, without making too much noise, you like instead of dragging your finger, you just have to tap on the screen to make him like tiptoe over to the picnic basket.
Oh, excellent.
Which I thought was very clever. And there are a bunch of other ways you can like conceal yourself in order to get to these picnic baskets and everything. Like you can obviously just hide behind like trees or in bushes. One of my favorite things so far is occasionally there will be like specific types of bushes that you can hide in, and like just sort of like then you pick up the bush and carry it around, so you just look like this incredibly suspicious like Looney Tunes bush walking around. So it's like the box in Metal Gear Solid,
right? I'm getting Metal Gear vibes. Yeah.
So if somebody looks over at you and they're like, "Oh my god, what's that bush? What's that doing over here?" You just have to stay put for a minute until their suspicion level drops down to normal. At that point, you can continue making your way towards the picnic basket. It feels like it's a bit of an RPG, or like, I don't want to say Metroidvania, but they're like, as you collect all this food, which you occasionally have to eat because you have a hunger meter for some reason, you also find ways to earn money, which you then use to go to the store that is run by a raccoon and buy items from him, so you can unlock different abilities in the campsite. And this is like, I don't know if it's just I haven't spent enough time with this game, but it feels a little grindy, or maybe I'm just earning money in an ineffective way, but it feels like it's taking me a lot of trips back to the campsite and like back to the store in order to unlock all of these upgrades.
Yeah.
Because some of them, the one I really have my eyes set on is you can like purchase a set of car keys, which lets you then commandeer any vehicle you find in the campsite. One of them is like a golf cart. And I've encountered one of the rangers like giving one of the campers a hard time. It's like, oh man, you're not supposed to take golf carts off the golf course or wherever. And at that point, he's very obviously like not looking at the golf cart. So I'm like, oh, if I only had a set of keys, I could take that thing, and then who knows what would happen.
Excellent.
So I expect the rest of the game is just the Sasquatch getting into more mischief, because I've seen screens of this thing where like clearly you're not in the campsite anymore. Like like there's screens of him in an office building wearing like human clothes, And I think in like a city street, I'm just like, what? Like, how does this game go from being a stealth game in a forest and being pursued by rangers to just a Sasquatch having like a family and like doing jobs in an office? I'm not sure how it gets to there.
It sort of turns into Octodad.
Yeah. There's a set of clothes you can buy as a disguise. It's like, this will let you get close to other humans because they'll be fooled, but it won't fool the rangers still. So,
interesting. That's funny.
It's hilarious. So I'm not sure. This game just may completely transform if I play a little further. I just need to spend a little more time unlocking stuff.
Oh, cute.
It's very weird.
I don't have an iOS device, and man, some of these Apple Arcade games just sound so appealing to me.
I could have sworn this was out on other platforms. In fact, I was checking for it beforehand, because I think it came out, it might have even like predated Apple Arcade, and then it just ended up getting absorbed into like, the Apple Arcade subscription thing. But I thought for sure it was out on something else, and nope, currently it's just iOS. Kind of weird. Not even sure if it's coming to anything else later on, but I don't know.
We can hope.
Yeah, it would be good. I'm not like super thrilled with the touch controls. In fact, this is the first time I have actually gone to the length of pairing a PS4 controller with my phone, and that was fine. But also, it's just, I don't have one of those like little like phone mounts. You've seen the ones where it's like a little harness that you attach a controller and like your phone just sits on it.
Oh, on top of your controller.
Yeah. So I don't have that, and as a result, I was just like, I have a little like stand for my phone that I put on my desk, and I was like trying to play this with a controller, but it's like, I don't know. If you ever use Switch in tabletop mode, it's like not a good experience. So it was very similar to that.
Yeah, except smaller.
Yeah, except even smaller. So I don't know. Maybe I'll dig my tablet out of the closet or whatever and try playing it on that. But just kind of weird, a weird experience control-wise.
Can you not play these games on an Apple? I almost had an Apple PC, and I know we would have gotten tons of calls and emails. But no, an Apple computer?
That's a good question. I don't know. All I have is my work laptop, so maybe I'll just go for it. Maybe they won't mind. Just be like, oh man, you've been logging some pretty late hours on the laptop lately. What's going on?
I'm a level 10 Sasquatch.
Yeah, right. Huh. I know you can play it, like if you have an Apple TV, which is their like little set-top box or whatever, you can play it on that, but I don't have one of those either, so just not in a great place to fully enjoy Apple Arcade games, I guess.
Well, you keep paying that bill every month then.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like subscription services go, it's probably the cheapest one. I think it's like $5 a month. God, I hope it's only $5 a month because I'm just letting that thing go. But I mean, that's at the point where I'm like, oh, I forgot to cancel it again. Whatever. I'll just play one game in the next month and it'll be fine.
Sure, it justifies the $5. That's not too bad.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, let's wrap this thing up, I guess. If you need any more video game hangover in your brain, definitely follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/VGHangover. And keep in mind, you can always get show notes and links and tell us what you thought about this episode at VGHangover.com. We would love to have you join our Discord, hang out with us, talk about video games and other things. You get a link to that at VGHangover.com as well.
Yeah.
Please subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcast, YouTube, and anywhere else you can get a podcast. And help us out by telling your friends about the show, please.
Yeah. But before you tell your friends about the show, tell them to just call 682-999-VGH1 and ask some weird question, like context-free. And it will be hilarious. And then explain why you had them do that. Just so they're not confused for the rest of their life.
Ask a context-free question and then call back and give us some context.
Right. Or don't. Who knows?
Sure.
We want to give thanks again to Felly Kitty for our intro and outro music this week. Please check out more of our work over at fellykitty.bandcamp.com. It's good.
Nice. We'll be back next week with more video games. Until then, this is Randy Dickinson.
This is DJ Ross.
Thanks for listening to Video Game Hangover. Goodbye.
Good night.
See ya.